Prospects of Vietnam's economic growth in 2023. The Vietnamese economic growth provides an inspiring narrative. Vietnam's economy has been growing rapidly and has exceeded the assessments of the International Monetary Fund, World Bank and ADB, with an 8.02% growth rate in 2022, which is the fastest rate since 1997. This strong performance is attributed to the country's successful handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and rising international tensions, making it one of the fastest-growing economies in Asia. There are several factors responsible for its fast economic growth. First, Vietnam has taken liberalization reforms seriously since 1986 when it implemented Doi Moi renovation to create a socialist-oriented market economy. The reforms encouraged private ownership, particularly in the industrial sector, and led to the recognition of private land rights in agriculture. These reforms have had a positive impact on the country's economy, resulting in a more than tenfold increase in GDP per capita, from under $300 in 1986 to $3,409.02 in 2021. The success of the Doi Moi policy has made Vietnam a prime example of how economic liberalization can drive economic growth and improve the standard of living for its citizens. Vietnam has been making continuous efforts to deregulate and introduce necessary reforms to support its economic growth. With consistent growth of around 7% in terms of GDP between 2000 and 2022, and a growth rate of about 3% during the pandemic period, the country has demonstrated its resilience and ability to adapt to changing circumstances. The observation by the 13th National Congress of the Communist Party of Vietnam that some goals of modernization and industrialization had not been fully achieved highlights the ongoing efforts of policymakers to drive further economic development. These efforts demonstrate the commitment of the government to achieve its targets and maintain strong economic growth. Second, the attempts to improve production both in the industrial and agricultural sectors as also boosting exports yielded good results. In 2022, the industrial and construction sectors grew 7.78%, the services sector expanded 9.99%, the agricultural sector grew 3.36%, exports were up 10.6%. $371.85 billion, and the retail sales rose 19.8%. The manufacturing and services sectors were the main drivers of economic growth, demonstrating the success of these efforts. These strong performance indicators in key sectors reflect the continuing positive trajectory of the Vietnamese economy. Third, maintaining low inflation has also been a key factor in Vietnam's economic growth. In 2022, the inflation rate was around 4%, which was well managed by the government and relevant agencies. The government took flexible measures, such as controlling market liquidity and combining fiscal policies with tax exemptions or reductions for essential and strategic commodities to keep inflation in check. Fourth, attracting sufficient foreign direct investment, FDI, has also been a factor in Vietnam's strong economic growth. The changes to the regulatory framework for foreign investment, such as the simplification of administrative procedures and the application of digital public services, have created a more efficient and attractive environment for foreign investors. The country's political stability and favorable business environment have also played a key role in attracting FDI. According to the Ministry of Planning, Vietnam had attracted a total of $27.72 billion in FDI by December 2022, with an additional 224 projects. The top FDI source countries in 2022 were Singapore, South Korea, and Japan. Fifth, Vietnam's emphasis on digitalization for the ease of doing business is an important act that contributes significantly towards the country's economic growth. At the 13th National Congress of the Vietnamese Communist Party, it was decided that the digital economy would account for about 20% of GDP by 2025. The Vietnamese government announced the 2025 to 2030 National Digital Transformation Program and selected 8 priority areas for digital innovation, including healthcare, education, finance, energy, logistics, industrial manufacturing, and agriculture. Since July 2022, 25 essential public services, including the reissuance of citizen ID cards, identity cards, registration for permanent or temporary residence, initial or reissuance of passports, etc., have been digitized, demonstrating the government's strong will to continue driving digital transformation. A survey conducted by the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry on digital transformation in Vietnamese enterprises found that industrial companies in Vietnam recognize the importance of digitalization. Some of them are already using technology to improve internal management, logistics, production, marketing, and financial transactions. Sixth, there has been a 19.8% increase in retail sales of goods and services reflecting increased domestic consumption, and also an increase in the income of domestic population. The domestic consumption has become an important driver for the economic growth. In November 2022, the National Assembly set the target for GDP growth at 6.5% for 2023, and the guidelines to achieve it. According to its resolution, priority will be given to closely monitoring market developments and promptly identifying risks to introduce feasible solutions, including financial and monetary policies, to stabilize the macroeconomy, control inflation and support economic recovery. It directed the government to accelerate the progress of key transport infrastructure construction projects, including approved urban railway projects and highway and ring road projects, and at the same time remove obstacles to put into operations large power projects such as Tai Binh 2, Gisun 2, Dien Hai 2, and Van Phong 1. A serendipitous dimension of the great power competition between the US and China, and the negative sentiments toward China, is that a number of manufacturing units from China are shifting to Vietnam. Several manufacturing firms have moved out of China, or are desirous of moving out. Even before the pandemic, many firms from China had moved out. Vietnam has become a favorite country for migration because of geographical proximity and a conducive business environment. Vietnam has emerged as a critical part in the global supply chain for textiles, footwear, and electronic manufacturing. The availability of cheap and young labor force also attracts the manufacturing industries to Vietnam. In view of the foregoing, the prospects for the economic growth in 2023 appear bright. The target fixed by the National Assembly is likely to be achieved despite global uncertainties arising from the big power rivalry in the South China Sea/East Sea and the Russia-Ukraine conflict. 3 expert groups have indicated that Vietnam's economic growth in 2023 will be either 6.5 or more. The Singapore-based United Overseas Bank, UOB, has kept its forecast for Vietnam's GDP growth in 2023 unchanged at 6.6% in line with the official forecast of 6.5%. The ASEAN Plus 3 Macroeconomic Research Office, AMRO, has raised Vietnam's 2023 GDP growth estimate to 6.8%. The Standard Chartered has indicated that Vietnam's economy will expand in 2023 at a rate of 7.2%. The State Bank of Vietnam has stated that it will operate monetary policy flexibly to keep the inflation rate at 4.5% in 2023, aiming to stabilize the currency and foreign exchange markets. If the inflation rate remains around 5%, the target for economic growth would be achievable. However, the global recession may pose a serious problem for the Vietnam's economic growth like all other countries. The 4 drivers will need to be given a further boost: higher investment, availability of critical technologies, a sufficient skilled labor force, infrastructure, and improved connectivity with markets. Inflation has to be kept under control, and exports will have to be diversified. In the long run, Vietnam has to ensure the availability of young skilled labor force, requiring suitable policy for population growth. Furthermore, as the system becomes more digitalist, the threat to cybersecurity requires more attention. Influence operations from external sources have the potentials to cause immense harm. This demands suitable precautionary steps. The government will need to pay attention to counter such narratives by publicizing its version